but they give greater clarity about who Lionel is and thus a little better understanding of Jeffrey Dahmer and his actions. Although Lionel's memoir is just one aspect of a multi-layered and extreme tragedy, he does have a unique perspective for anyone interested in Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes, his upbringing, and how families deal with criminal behavior. What it is like to be the father of a son whose name is synonymous with depraved killing. What can his and Jeffrey's life tell us about the ongoing debates over nature versus nurture? These are hard questions to wrestle with, and it is brave of Lionel to share his life and experiences so openly. I can attest that it has been difficult for him to talk and write about his experiences, but his efforts have been worthwhile. I am confident you will find this book engaging and valuable reading. Marshall Glickman, publisher, Echo Point Books and Media, February 2021. Part 1. If the police had told me that my son was dead, I would have thought differently about him. If they had told me that a strange man had lured him to a seedy apartment and a few minutes later drugged, strangled, then sexually assaulted and mutilated his dead body, in other words, if they had told me the same horrible things that they had to tell so many other fathers and mothers in July of 1991, then I would have done what they have done. I would have mourned my son and demanded that the man who'd killed him be profoundly punished. If not executed, then separated forever from the rest of us. After that, I would have tried to think of my son warmly. I would, I hope, have visited his grave from time to time, spoken of him with loss and affection, continued as much as possible to be the custodian of his memory. But I wasn't told what these other mothers and fathers were told, that their sons were dead at the hands of a murderer. Instead, I was told that my son was the one who had murdered their sons. And so my son was still alive. I couldn't bury him. I couldn't remember him fondly. He was not a figure of the past. He was still with me, as he still is. Initially, of course, I couldn't believe that it was really Jeff who had done the things the police had accused him of. How could anyone believe that his son could do such things? I had been in the actual places where they said he had done them. I had been in rooms and basements which, at other moments, according to the police, had been nothing less than a slaughterhouse. I had looked in my son's refrigerator and seen only a scattering of milk cartons and soda cans. I had leaned casually on the black table they claimed my son had used both as a dissecting table and a bizarre satanic altar. How was it possible that all of this had been hidden from me? Not only the horrible physical evidence of my son's crimes, but the dark nature of the man who had committed them. This child I had held in my arms 1,000 times, and whose face, when I glimpsed it in the newspapers, looked like mine. Predictably, as the evidence accumulated and became increasingly ghastly, I made myself believe that Jeff could not have done such things on his own, but that he had acted only as the tool of someone else, someone more evil than my son, someone who had taken advantage of Jeff's loneliness and isolation and had turned him into a terrible slave. I conjured visions of this other that were probably as satanic as the ones in Jeff's imagination. The other was an evil genius and manipulator, a diabolical Svengali who had lured my son into the circle of his power and then converted him into a mindless demon. As I allowed myself to imagine such a person, the air around me seemed to fill with darting, screeching bats, and I accepted, although briefly, a world that was as hideous and malevolent as the things my son had done. But I am an analytical thinker, and so, no matter how much I might have wanted to believe in the reality of this demonic other, I had to accept that it was no more than a phantom I had created to protect my son, to remove some part of the blame that had been heaped upon him. And so my first confrontation was with myself, with the fact that I am an analytical person. I deal in real things, not things that are imagined. Evidence is evidence, and it has to be recognized as such. There was no evidence that anyone had ever made Jeff kill anyone.